Heidi.
Hi, Fanny.
Hi, Kurt. I mean, you, Trevino.
Did you call me Kirk? Heidi, how
Hey,
are you?
it's been a long day. It's been a long day. Okay, I'm in Pacific time. Okay, you guys gotta remember this.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We will remember this. In fact, I will not forget that you called me Kirk. That's the best compliment I've ever had. Heidi, it's good to see you.
Good to see
Um,
you.
you
Yes.
look like you're in a very comfortable place.
Well, my home. So
You're in DC, correct?
yes, I'm in DC. I suppose I could.
I'm not asking for your address, but what part of DC do you live in?
I'm in Glover Park,
Clover.
just north of Georgetown area.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Hi, Heidi. Heidi or Heidi?
Heidi.
Heidi. Okay. So I was pronouncing it right.
No,
Yes.
Haiti is the country, Fanny. Haiti is the country.
Hey, I don't know. You know, it's English. English doesn't have a rule that you cannot break. Okay. You know. Really, you know, when you're learning English, so I learned English, and they always say, you know, in Spanish they have rules, and English they have rules, but English has a rule, but like 20 different exceptions. So how could you have a rule with 20 different exceptions? So that's what I was saying. But thank you for joining us. Thank you. It's really
Yeah.
nice seeing you
Yeah.
virtually. And I'm Fanny, just in case you don't know, I'm Fanny. I'm the president of the
Oh,
National
nice to meet you. Yeah.
NAHP. And you know, I'm also in San Diego. I publish a Latino newspaper in San Diego County.
Oh, all right.
Let me get Aaron, okay?
Okay. Debating. Just let me see if I
We need
have
Aaron.
this background.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Does I need to rotate it? No, it's right. Okay.
Oh, that's a great backdrop.
Okay, there we go. Then you don't
And-
see my.
And of course, the guy with a PhD has nothing but books behind him.
Well, good. There we go. I'll be corporate. He can be books.
Yeah. So Fanny Miller, president of NHP, and
Yeah, wonderful to meet you.
we have Aaron and we have Heidi. And so we want to let people know that we're back. We took a break after Dr. Fauci. Most of us ran out to get a COVID test just to make sure that we're healthy and sane. But this is our second day, and you guys are on. Thank you so much for joining us. It's the fourth session in 2 days. And after this, we're probably going to do some other stuff. But Fanny, did you want to start off?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Heidi. So we're coming back for a little bit of break. We had a really amazing session with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Rios, and that was really, you know, uplifting, and it was an honor to have him. But I'm so thrilled to be here and have, you know, both of you be with us. So let me just introduce you. We're going to have the panel, Climate Change and Energy Transition. And this is our second day at the conference. We'll go all the way to Friday. But you know, thank you for everybody that came back after the break. So we have, I'm gonna leave the moderator for the last, okay? So we have Dr. Aaron Padilla. Aaron is the manager of climate and ESG policy at the American Petroleum Institute, API. He leads API work to determine and represent the natural gas and oil industry's public policy positions on climate and on reporting and disclosure relative to sustainability and environmental social governance. ESG issues. Aaron is a member of the U.S. Government Industry Trade Advisory Committee, ETAC, on energy and energy services. In the last 13 years, he has worked in 30 countries across 6 continents prior to joining API. Aaron worked for Chevron as senior advisor for global issues and public policy, with responsibility for both supporting new capital investments on the ground and representing the company globally for international policy initiatives. Dr. Padilla is a Marshall Scholar and Truman Scholar, and he completed his MPhil and PhD at the University of Cambridge and BA at the Stanford University. I am really jealous of him for being in 6 different you know, in so many, all across the world. But thank you for being here, Aaron. It's a really pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And then we're going to have, and then I'm also going to introduce you, Heidi. Heidi, Heidi Keller, joined by BP American as a Director of Health Safety and Environmental Advocacy and Policy in 2018. She is responsible for advocating in BP's Washington, D.C. office on health, safety, environmental, and climate-related issues. Heidi is also a passionate advocate on mental health. Prior to BP, Heidi spent 3 years in the American Petroleum Institute, where she was a policy advisor focusing primarily on pipeline safety, process safety, and occupational health. Previously, Heidi was a legislative assistant for Senator Carl Levin, advising on energy and environmental issues. She began her career in the federal government with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, working for both the National Ocean Service and NOAA's Chief Financial Officer. Heidi has a BS in Environmental Science from the University of Vermont and MS in Energy Policy and Climate from Johns Hopkins University. To both of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this time and taking the time to be with us. And last, I'm gonna introduce Mr. That we already know him, but we don't know his bio. So I'm going to read his bio. It's not that long. So Michael is the principal of Trevino & Company, a boutique consulting practice that specializes in developing public-private partnerships rooted in outreach, education, engagement, and mobilization. He's also an executive advisor to the Trevino Consulting. And Mr. Trevino, you have, I'm not gonna say how many years of experience, but yes, thank you for being here. Looking forward to a great conversation, and I'll be sticking around. Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny. Appreciate
Gracias.
it. Yeah. I'm really excited by this. In fact, I mean, here we are. And Aaron, I was going to start to say that you're working at API now, and Heidi worked at API before, and now she's at BP. So you might even think that there's a future ahead of you, Aaron, as working at API. There may be something well beyond that. But look, kudos on those incredible academic credentials. I mean, a Truman Scholar. Those are not easy to get, and so it really speaks very highly of you, and indeed it speaks highly of companies like Chevron and API as an institution that hire people like you, and I'm delighted by Heidi's own trajectory, working at NOAA, and I'm sort of thinking the way I would spell NOAA, because we just had 10 inches of rain in Houston, so I would spell it the old way, NOAH. But we know what we're talking about, the National Oceanography. I couldn't even say it, and I'm stumbling over it. But it's great to have you both here. Aaron, first, give me an idea of what the acronym ESG stands for.
ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And okay, it's an increasing focus of the financial sector globally on the ways in which companies in the oil and natural gas and in all industry sectors manage their environmental and their social performance, and how the risks and opportunities associated with environmental and social issues are governed within the company.
Yeah, and you know, Fanny did such a great job of recapping and highlighting your bios, and so we know what's in your bio, but I wanted to take a little bit different step and ask you how you got to what you're doing. And so if we could just have Heidi start off and tell us, people want to know how you can get a job at companies like Chevron, companies like API, companies like BP, and many others. And so can you give us an idea, Heidi, of how you got to where you are?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You're muted.
Right. Can you hear me?
Are you muted?
No, I don't think so. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Michael,
I'm not able to hear you, Heidi.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Well, sure. Yeah, thanks. So as Fanny mentioned, I started my career actually in organic.
Can I turn the volume up for him?
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No. It's her volume. Can you turn your volume up, Heidi? We're having a problem with your volume, and can you speak a little higher? Low, excuse me, not higher, but louder?
I'll get closer. How's that?
Okay, get it. Oh, so you're using the microphone in your computer.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think you probably want to get a little closer.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, thank you. It was nice that Fanny was able to give such a nice introduction to both Aaron and Aaron. I started my career, as she said, at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I joined a science program office at NOAA, actually working on managing the tide stations throughout the U.S. The tide stations that take in the tidal data and actually inform tide charts. And then we use that data to inform other oceanographic products and work with other aspects of NOAA. And so I always had an interest in the intersection of science and policy, and worked at NOAA for a number of years, and then started to kind of go more into the policy side of things, working for the CFO at NOAA, and then eventually moving and working also on the appropriations side, working with our appropriators at NOAA, and working with the Office of Management and Budget. Then had the great opportunity to secure a fellowship working for Senator Carl Levin. I worked in energy and environmental policy there, and prior to that, got my master's degree, and that's when I really decided that I wanted to move more into the energy space, but from the health, safety, and environmental angle. And then before I actually moved to API, I had a good gap in my resume, I suppose, if that's how you would refer to it. But about 9 months before I was at the senator's office, before I worked at API, and I actually went back to the service industry. I've been in had jobs in the service industry all along throughout my career, and worked at a restaurant here in DC, and then eventually got the job at API, where I started working on safety in their downstream and midstream safety programs, and really got a great sense for how API is really the main convener for the industry on safety, and how what an important role that API has to play. And so then it was kind of the sum of the parts there with my degrees and work in various pieces of the government, and my work at API that kind of gave me that balance of health, safety, and environmental portfolio. And I started with BP in June of 2018. It's been a great experience so far, to be able to work on the health, safety, environmental side of a big energy company with so much promise, and kind of it's really starting to chart the path towards an energy transition. And so I would say the path wasn't always easy. Many interviews, many lots of networking along the way, but it's interesting how you start to build those different pieces, and then they connect, and eventually you kind of get to the spot where you want to stay for a little while. So yeah.
That's great. It's a great description of your own trajectory, your own personal experiences. May I ask, I mean, it is on your bio that you're passionate about mental health. Is there something you want to share with us about that?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. So I actually found it quite intriguing, getting into a big company, and mental health is actually a priority for us at BP. It's something that we've been talking about quite a bit, and prior to the pandemic, and even more so now in the midst of the pandemic. And it's something that I've also struggled with over the years. So I'm always happy to talk about it with other people, and how we we each have our own story, and we're all looking for our own mirrors, and we want to hear stories from others. So it's actually, BP has been is a great place that's kind of provided that forum for employees to come out and speak about their challenges on mental health. And so it's we'll be doing a little bit more this year in light of the COVID-19 pandemic as well, since everyone has tried to it's been a challenging time for everyone. So it's something that I do internally within BP, but then always look for opportunities as well to talk about it outside of the company.
Well, thank you very much for that. As you heard Fanny say that we had Dr. Fauci on, and as Fanny was moderating the Q&A, she disclosed that she had contracted COVID-19 and what she did for that. So at the end of the day, it's wonderful to be able to work for companies that have the resources and have these values, if you will,
Right.
and priorities. And I think oftentimes we don't speak often enough about it, because at the end of the day, those employers who could afford it, I think it's a wonderful thing for them to be able to provide that. So thank you for sharing that. Aaron, Fanny focused on 6 continents. Did you just take a Europe pass and go throughout Europe, or was it a little bit more significant than that?
Well, actually, I did take a year off between my undergraduate years and my graduate studies, and I bought an around the world ticket, and I did travel all around the world. And then that's a passion that I've been very fortunate to be able to bring through to my graduate studies and to my professional career. And my own interest in energy started when I was a student. And as an undergraduate, I did a research project on a new natural gas pipeline line from Argentina to Chile that had generated a lot of community opposition. And so I researched why that was the case and what that entailed in terms of the country's new environmental law that gave a lot more participation to citizens in permitting processes. And then I carried that interest in energy through to my PhD research, where I did 5 months of field work in the Niger Delta in Nigeria. And I was researching the relationship between communities and the Nigerian government and the oil and natural gas industry around the environmental and human rights issues that were prevalent in a very rough transition that the country was going through in the 1990s from a dictatorship to democracy. And then I was very privileged to be able to bring that experience and that interest into a career in the industry, as Fanny described.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, clearly employers like API and BP are able to avail themselves of your own personal experience and those issues that you're passionate about. Obviously this couldn't be a more timely conversation. We're talking climate change. We're talking energy transitions. And so, many Western states are doing continuing fires that are having a dramatic impact on the surrounding states, not just the near ones. I mean, because we heard reports that some of the ash clouds were all the way to the East Coast, and that's where you guys are. The other is that here in Houston, as I just mentioned, we ran out of names in the alphabet for this particular cycle of tropical storms and hurricanes. So we moved on to the Greek alphabet. And so the storm that's hitting Houston now is Beta. And we're projected to continue to have some more rain through tomorrow afternoon. So climate change is real. I don't think anyone denies it. And I'm interested in engaging your interest, or rather your view of how the industry that oftentimes is much maligned as holding us back and trying to make positive changes in this. I mean, it's not us driving our cars that is bringing all these hurricanes and tropical storms, and it's not us driving our cars that is resulting in all the fires on the West Coast. What does API, as the trade association for more than 600 energy companies, what's your view on climate change?
Yes, well, I appreciate the question and the topic of the panel. I think it's important for us in the industry to speak to stakeholders across the country and the world about the role of our industry and the commitment that we have that might be surprising to some to play a constructive role in reducing the risks of climate change. We see this as a dual challenge. America's natural gas and oil companies are working every day to meet a challenge of, number one, delivering affordable and reliable energy in a way that we all just take for granted often in the United States, while number two, also reducing the risks of climate change. So it's this dual challenge of affordable and reliable energy and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the risks of climate change that our industry is increasingly positioning ourselves to meet. And the point of departure for us in the way that we think about all of this is best exemplified by the International Energy Agency, and they have a sustainable development scenario which outlines how the world can achieve universal access to energy and reduce the severe health effects of air pollution, and at the same time tackle climate change. And in their modeling of the energy future for the world, this sustainable development scenario shows a trajectory that we could be on if we were going to meet the commitments of the Paris Agreement. And it shows that even in that aggressive and ambitious scenario where we would be meeting all of these commitments that companies made in the Paris Agreement, that by the time we get to 2040, oil and natural gas will still be nearly half, about 46% of the global energy mix. So there's a continued need for us to meet the energy demands that society all around the world will have, and to deliver on oil and natural gas as a part of that. And we see that there are many solutions that different companies can bring to this, and Heidi will speak specifically to BP's as a great example. And the last thing I would highlight in terms of our industry's perspective here is that it is truly a global challenge. The US has a responsibility as the world's leading producer of oil, the world's leading producer of natural gas, to also continue to build on some leadership that the United States has been able to deliver in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we in the US need to continue to do more and to collaborate with other countries, especially other growing economies with significant amounts of greenhouse gas emissions like China and India, to follow our example and to continue in the success that we've already achieved, and work all together for the continued efforts that we need to pursue going forward. So at a high level, that's how we think about it in the natural gas and oil industry.
Thank you. Since you mentioned the Paris Agreement, I want to come back to you after we give Heidi an opportunity. I mean, one of the things that I've read just recently is that BP has acquired stakes in Equinor, which is a wind farm company. And I know that BP is also pursuing alternative and renewable sources of energy. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. How's my volume now? Is this good?
Great.
It's better?
Great.
Okay. I worked on that. So
you succeeded.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let me just, if you don't mind, take a step or two back and just explain too that obviously BP, we've been in the US for quite some time, and we operate in over 70 countries across the world, and so we're really committed to the US and the operations that we have here. We have invested over 115 billion from between 2005 and 2018, and we have over 14,000 employees currently here in the US. And so we operate in a lot of different spaces. As you mentioned, there's a recent partnership that we announced with Equinor for offshore wind. This was a really exciting opportunity for us because it's our first venture into the offshore wind space. So that's a deal that we are looking to close in 2021. And it will specifically leverage 2 projects off of the coast of Massachusetts and New York. But it really fits into our larger new strategy of where we want to go as a company. And so as kind of Aaron was talking about the climate change and Paris ambitions, we made a decision earlier this year around February. We have a new CEO came on board, Bernard Looney, and he kind of set us on a different path, a different trajectory to become, as you can see, a net zero company by 2050. And we've set forth a variety, 10 different aims to help us get there. We have aims that are focused internally for our company on how we will become net zero. And then we have aims that are focused externally on how we hope to help others become, move on the path towards net zero and move towards more of a lower carbon economy. So, and we've also most recently gotten a little bit more granular on our approach and our strategy. And we are looking to increase our investments in low carbon energy to about 5 billion a year. So the venture that you mentioned with, or the partnership with Equinor, will just be, and that's kind of one of an initial start, kind of on adding to our new strategy. And we're certainly looking to do more. We've also increased our wind assets in Indiana, and a project that we're also already invested in. And further, we're looking for new opportunities to work with cities and regions, and to help cities get to the goal of net zero. But certainly too, recognize that oil and gas will continue to play a large part of our strategy, and it will actually provide us with the cash flow in order to be able to navigate the energy transition. And so we're just going to focus it a little bit more on how we focus our oil and gas business a little bit more, and also focus heavily on emissions reductions, and setting pretty clear targets to achieve that.
Is that just in the US or is it global?
No, that's global. Mhm.
Global. Okay, so I like the green background, and I like the aiming for zero. Aaron, is BP leading the pack among the energy majors in this country and globally on those issues?
Well, I would definitely highlight BP as an example in our industry of truly the sort of work that we know that the entire industry needs to be doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with the oil and natural gas industry, and show ways in which they can allocate their capital in ways that provides us with all of the energy that we're going to need in the years ahead. But API, we represent over roughly 600 member companies, and we see different examples from different companies that we all consider to be leaders in terms of climate. And so there are multiple solutions. And across the board at API, we see that our companies are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and the scope of the challenge is certainly big enough for a variety of solutions, one of which is certainly exemplified by everything that Heidi described that BP is doing. So that's the way that we see it, is that there are multiple pathways, and the leadership is going to be demonstrated by different companies that are doing different things. And we appreciate BP's voice in and participation in the convening that Heidi noted that we do at API.
It's interesting. You represent 2 of the 9.8 million jobs that the industry supports in the United States. So with these changes, what's the impact or projected impact on the workforce? And I'm asking from the perspective of the Hispanic community and all those people who haven't succeeded at getting the master's that you have, Heidi, or the double doctorate that you have, Aaron. And so I'm interested in hearing how is it that industry, as they transition to something else, are able to continue to, one, replace the workers that are retiring, and at the same time search for the workers that will be replacing them, and ensuring that they have the skills that they need to do a successful job of it?
That's a great question. I can take a first stab at answering from an industry-wide perspective, and then if Heidi would like to add from a BP perspective. Even with some of the energy transition that Heidi was describing, that BP is certainly going to be a part of, and the work that we're all going to need to do as a global society to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address the risks of climate change, our industry, the oil and gas industry, still projects that we will need to hire nearly 1.9 million workers between 2020 and 2040. And based on our preliminary analysis for a study that we're working on that examines the future of our industry's workforce, we see that 48% or so of these new jobs through 2040 will be filled by those that identify as African American or Black, Hispanic or Latinx, Asian or non-white. And we're also examining gender for this study. Combined, we see that women and people of color are projected to fill about 60% of the total job opportunities that we identify our industry will need for our work through 2040. And STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, math, are certainly very important, but also at every education level. And it's estimated that nearly half of STEM jobs, many of which you can easily imagine in our industry, do not require a 4-year degree. In fact, a third of all STEM jobs are in blue-collar occupations. So this is especially significant for our industry, Michael, because we've got more than 1 million craft and trades job opportunities that are projected just in oil and gas through 2040. And these are also really good paying jobs in oil and natural gas. Our analysis shows that people in our industry earn on average of $45,000 more per year than the average American. So that's the view that we have about the workforce we're going to need for the future, and how communities of color and women are going to play a significant role in filling those opportunities.
And I'm in touch with many people in the labor community, and they tell me that one of the things that they're doing is basically competing with you, because at the same time, they're looking for those replacement workers, members, if you will, to the union that are in the building trades. And those are well-paying jobs. And so the question is, how can we channel people to those opportunities to be able to do that? Maybe Heidi can give us an idea of how BP is doing that.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. Certainly to deliver on our strategy, we're going to continue to need a diverse workforce, and we absolutely must continue to retain and attract the best people. And we're really working, as I said, to reinvent ourselves and become a new company and be more purpose-driven, empathetic, value-led, and curious. So really, whatever the skill it may be that you have, we want people who are lifelong learners. We want people who come into the company curious, wanting to grow, and just really, really curious about the world around them. So our focus again is hiring and retaining the best talent. And as I said, that our purpose is kind of what defines us. I think I alluded to that a little bit in my intro, and really that, we all take a good deal of meaning in our day-to-day jobs here at BP. And I think, redefining and that sense of purpose is reaching a different group of people that we may not have otherwise reached. And certainly, as we move forward, the digital world is going to be increasingly important, and that certainly will be a focus for us. And we want to continue to connect with all sorts of groups in order to have different perspectives, and STEM education is incredibly important. We do quite a bit there on that front. And so, as I said, our aim is to get to net zero, and we're going to need a variety of perspectives to help us get there and to help us succeed. And we want to be a part of the solution and offering those opportunities.
Well, I would say that it's totally appropriate for me in terms of engage in full disclosure. The National Association of Hispanic Publications is one of the 19 different advocacy groups that has been invited and actually has been working with the American Petroleum Institute for now 6-7 years. And the purpose of that council really is to meet with senior management at the Institute at the same time that they have opportunities to meet with executive leadership of companies to deal specifically with these issues, to try to help people understand the value of the industry at the same time that they're able to prepare themselves to secure the value of a job in the industry. And that's very helpful. Aaron, you mentioned that you've traveled extensively, and Mary from La Oferta in California put in the chat box asking you if you were in Ecuador at the time of Chevron's operation. I guess I should also inform Mary that it was not Chevron. Chevron acquired Texaco and its history in 2001. And so the operations that Mary might be referring to actually date back to the late 50s, early 60s with a company by the name of Texas Petroleum Company. But were you in Ecuador? I didn't see you there.
I've been to Ecuador, but only as a tourist and once to attend a friend's wedding, so not professionally. Not
professionally. I will tell you, the community of Lago Agrio in northeastern Ecuador, which is in the Ecuadorian Amazon, actually has a very interesting name. If you're bilingual, you know what Lago Agrio means in English. That's Sour Lake. Several engineers from Texaco's operations at Sour Lake, Texas, were commissioned to go to Ecuador to engage in the exploration activities. And they decided to call that base camp Lago Agrio. And so today, Lago Agrio is the 5th largest city in the country of Ecuador. I hope we answered your question, Mary. If you have any more questions than that, please head them back to me. I'm happy to take those. I also, we had a conversation earlier in anticipation of this, Aaron and Heidi, and I was intrigued by the idea that BP and American Petroleum Institute took a position on the Black Lives Matter and the demonstrations. And I know that BP longstanding has had policies relative to those issues. And I'm wondering, might you share with us, Aaron, what API's position is and their actions that they've taken?
Sure. We at API strongly condemn prejudice or discrimination of any kind. And we believe that at API, our diversity makes us better and stronger and more resilient. I think that the catalyst of George Floyd's death and the strength of the Black Lives Matter movement in the US has also helped us to recommit to that at API and to work to make sure that we're doing everything that we can within API and within our industry. I'll just give you a bit of a snapshot. We are always constantly striving to ensure that our workforce is represented by diverse backgrounds and that we're helping for our employees and prospective employees to reach their potential. 33% of API's own workforce is represented by people of color, including 18% African American or Black, and 47% of our workforce is female. So we have a start for ensuring that our workforce is representative of the way in which the country looks as a whole. But we know that we like all in any organization, have more work to do. And so we're taking that very seriously as we all recommit to this. And I can tell you, Michael, that in my own experience, I'm trying to do what I can within my sphere of influence. I have an opening in my team right now, and we're currently in the process of selecting candidates to come for interviews, and then we'll ultimately select somebody to fulfill the role. And I recognize that, for example, my own educational background and my own professional opportunities were often the product of privilege, but that privilege shouldn't be a determinant for potential. And so as I'm looking at the applicants for the job opening in my team right now, I'm really trying to look at those who might come from more unconventional backgrounds and see and read in between maybe the sterling qualifications that might just catch your eye immediately for potential that might be harder to see, and to really invite a group of people to come and interview with our team for this position that gives us a greater chance of adding to that diversity that we have in API's workforce. So it's just a way that we're trying to translate our recommitment as an organization down into the very things that we do all the way through to hiring practices.
Thank you. You know, Heidi, you mentioned how many employees BP has. Can you remind me what you said?
It's about, the latest number is around 14,000 in the US.
So 14,000 in the US, and here we are, as Dr. Fauci reminded us, more than 200,000 deaths and more than 7 million people infected with COVID-19. How are you guys dealing with it?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I mean, it's like everyone, it's been a challenging several months, and I don't think any of us ever expected that, you know, we'd still be in the situation that we're in six months out. But you know, our BP, you know, we're well equipped to respond, and we just, you know, we're kind of, that's how we're primed, and that's the environment that we work in. And so immediately when this happened, we pulled together a number of teams throughout the U.S. Within each country to start assessing the risk and developing plans for how we can keep our employees safe. And those calls and teams are continuing to date to continue to evaluate the situation. We actually have a team of health experts within BP, so we're lucky to have that expertise. But our main focus is obviously to keep our employees safe and to ensure that we can continue operations in a way that brings everyone home safely. For our office workers, those who can work from home are continuing to do so in the U.S. and around the world, where the risks are more considerable. As far as working within our communities, you know, we're based of offices in Houston and in Chicago and in Denver, and we're, you know, definitely cognizant of the communities that we work in and we live in. And we've actually, you know, taken the opportunity in the pandemic to try to do more. Specifically, I really liked you know, some of the things that the Denver office has been doing for the past few years. Actually, prior to the COVID pandemic, they've been covering the electric and gas utility costs for about a dozen homeless shelters. And so with the COVID pandemic, we've continued to do that and provide the electric and utility costs. But we've also increased, we've also continued to make additional donations to the Denver Rescue Mission to support temporary shelters for those who have lost their jobs. And then we're also working to help the wider community recover from COVID-19 in Colorado. Colorado established a COVID relief fund, and we've been providing to that to help aid in the recovery for groups who are disproportionately affected by the outbreak. And then there's certainly other things that we've been doing too, to provide PPE, to provide jet fuel, also working with STEM learning programs in Houston. A number of students are having to work from home, right, or having to learn from home right now. And so we're engaged in that. I think it's, it's a matter of all of us trying to come together and find a way to navigate this new environment. And we,
Absolutely. And in fact, since I'm in here, I can tell you that Kathleen Martinez, who works for you guys here, is a dear friend and is very active in the community. They're one of the high-profile supporters of so many different worthwhile civic activities, and so it's an important thing to be able to do. I know that API, as a trade association, has its own profile, but it doesn't necessarily. I know you guys get very involved in local Washington, D.C. metropolitan area causes and stuff. You know, I was hopeful that, you know, many of us have a relationship with the energy industry that typically is defined by walking into a room and flipping the switch. Oftentimes it's defined by walking and putting in the nozzle and fueling up your tank to get somewhere. But it's more than that. And so, but I also think that as we're talking about issues of climate change, there is some personal responsibility. So I'm wondering, what would you want to share with people who are listening that you consider to be your personal responsibility, if you will, in making a contribution to mitigate climate change and to mitigate other issues that we confront on a day-to-day basis?
Well, do you want me to? Do you want Aaron to?
Go ahead, Heidi, and I'll come in after
Okay.
you.
Well, I just spoke. I didn't want to. So the question is on the personal side. You're asking what is my personal commitment? Okay. Well, sure. As I mentioned before, I am deeply passionate about health, safety, and environmental policy. I think it's really value driven, and so it's easy to kind of to get behind those issues and ensure that, you know, we bring our employees home each day. We do as much as we can for environmental protection, and then we're ensuring the health and safety of our employees and those in our communities. So from a personal side, I mean, I think, you know, I feel lucky to be well poised within BP to actually to be an advocate and to be able to speak on climate change and to help get our message out there. And the more that we speak about it, we can help change the conversation with others. We can help educate people. And it's not just about speaking to those who are of the same mindset. We've got to talk to people who think differently than we do. And so I definitely keep that at the forefront of my mind regarding engagements. It's like you need to expand beyond your comfort zone and talk to others who you may not have always thought to speak with. So I definitely, given that, you know, my sense of purpose around climate change and health, safety, and environmental advocacy aligns well with BP. It's a good fit in that I can use that as a platform for advocacy too. So, and then also too, I would say, I suppose, working with, as Aaron will speak to from the API standpoint. I mean, obviously we are members of API, and we use that as another opportunity to help change the conversation, to help highlight new issues, and help kind of bring people along on the conversation around climate. So,
thank you. Appreciate the insights, Aaron. A little different twist for you. You've had a few minutes to sort of think about it, and I don't want to take you off of the topic, but you know, you've traveled the world. You see how the different communities in so many different countries, and regretfully, I mean, there are a lot of right-on alternatives to suggestions in the United States where people in different communities in this country resemble communities in other countries, in developing and third world countries. And I'm wondering, it sounds to me like you probably would, it appears to me that you might have some interest in having traveled the world and seen so many different communities of how we might be able to help transform those communities here by individual and collective action.
Yes, I like the question as you framed it initially to Heidi, and here now, certainly choices that we make as individuals, consumers and voters and citizens make a difference. And if we're considering the carbon intensity, for example, of the lifestyle that we lead, there'll be all sorts of opportunities that present themselves to us around what we choose to eat and how we choose to travel and how we choose to live that can make a difference. But I would also say that at the scale of change that we need and at the scale of the solution that we need to truly reduce the risks of climate change, it's going to require government action and government coordinated action and public policy. And so perhaps the most important role that I embrace, even as an energy professional who works on climate change, is as an individual voter. And I think that's what I would encourage everyone to consider, how you can become as informed as you'll need to be able to vote on climate, as well as any other of a range of issues that are going to be important when you go to the ballot box. And the challenge is truly global, as you say, Michael, and the needs for energy are significant in underserved communities in the US as much as they are for emerging economies globally. And the challenge and the effects of climate change are going to be felt globally as well. And so I think that we need to figure out ways where we can continue to enjoy energy as a building block for modern life that we have the privilege to enjoy here in the United States, and the jobs and the economic vibrancy in the United States that are associated with the oil and natural gas industry, while we also tackle climate change. And I would just encourage all of us as individual voters to bear in mind the range of solutions that we're going to need and how oil and natural gas can be a part of that solution. Here in the US, the switching from higher carbon intensity sources of power generation to using natural gas to generate electricity has paid the largest dividend in recent years in the United States for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And according to the EPA, for example, energy-related CO2 emissions fell by 12% from 2005 to 2018. And that's really due in large part to switching from higher carbon intensity sources to natural gas for generating electricity. So it's just one small statistic that I think we can use to arm ourselves and inform ourselves as voters and citizens as we continue to advocate to policymakers about the paths that they need to forge for us, because it's really going to require solutions at the scale of government policies and at the scale of government action.
Well, thank you very, very much for your time today. I very much enjoyed it. I hope people learned from it. I certainly did. I would also tell you that it takes all, and it takes all of us involved. Last week, I was in a conference with some of the publishers that are members of this organization, and they were having a conversation about reducing their own carbon footprint, trying to figure out ways to do it. And interesting enough, I hadn't thought about it, but this one publisher said that the biggest source of his carbon footprint is the delivery service. They pay to have subscriptions delivered to individual homes and businesses, and so he's trying to figure out ways to be able to do that. But thank you both very much for taking the time today. I'm very grateful. If we can get Fanny to come back on so that we can bring closure to our program and let you go back to doing what you're supposed to be doing, okay? Maybe this was part of it. I hope it was. Fanny? You're muted, Fanny.
I know, I'm talking to myself again. Sorry. Thank you very much for taking the time and for all the knowledge. And you know, like we're both going to invite you back. I think this conversation, it needs to keep, you know, going, and we need more education on it, you know, for us as publishers, and also so we could, you know, take it out to our communities. But thank you very much for your time and for your support.